Hello to those watching, both local and far away. This is our internship presentation by Jessica, Natasha, Werda, Chase, Michael, and Stephanie. So you may be asking, what is the mentorship initiative? Well, it was born out of the pain and suffering of all of us during first year. Collectively, we wished that we had second years we could go to and talk to and seek counsel and just vent to, who could reassure us that we were going to make it out alive. And as such, the mentorship initiative was born. We saw ways in which we could be useful to those in the future with our experience, and so we created a mentorship program through which we could provide support and help we wish we had, but for the new year ones. Through this mentorship program, we all had different areas in which we wanted to explore and focus our inquiry assignment based upon. And so I recommend you grab a drink, maybe some popcorn or your food of choice, and then get ready to listen and enjoy. All right, so let's get into it. I chose to focus my attention on the small group instructors for the year ones. I wanted to know from their perspective whether or not the mentorship program was valuable for their students based on what they've heard. Here we are at the learning goals and success criteria. Overall, the big idea was to engage in the research by being an active mentor, also by conducting informal and formal interviews with both mentees and instructors, and then to collect and interpret feedback and use that information to answer my research question. Moving on to the literature, there were a few key takeaways. First, instructors found peer mentorship programs to be most effective when incorporated into first-year classes. Second, though generally unusual, when instructors are interviewed or surveyed about peer mentorship, they gave the feedback that it's great to have peer mentors there because students will be honest and tell the mentors information that they would not tell the instructors directly, and that's beneficial because then the mentors take that information and do relay it to the instructors, and then the instructors can use that for learning what they can do to improve. So that's a benefit for them, an indirect benefit. And then also the research does promote the idea that mentorship should be introduced to beginning teachers in a B.Ed program because it will be a natural extension into their career as teachers, and so there's no better place really to introduce them to it. I chose to look at my entire inquiry process through Kolb's model. So I started at the active experimentation phase. From the mentorship that we had received when we were year ones, I found that there were some things that could have been improved on to make it better as a mentee. So with those ideas, I actively implemented them, which moved me to the concrete experience stage. Further seeing how receptive the mentees are to this, which then moved me to reflective observation, seeing if what I conceptualized was the same as the experience. And when it was not, I would reflect on these things and make notes of them. And with that information, I'm moving to the abstract conceptualization stage. In addition to getting feedback, is where I am thinking about how to improve what was done so that the mentorship program could be better for those in the future. So in order to gain the information that I wanted from the instructors, I used SurveyMonkey. I posed different types of questions, and my intention was to find out how the instructors viewed mentorship, because whatever their view was, that would impact whether or not they promoted the program that we had. It was also to gauge whether or not students used the program and if it was valuable, again from the instructor point of view, and then just to get feedback on ways to improve the program. So in summary, the results were very positive. They did coincide with the literature and also my conjectures that students do find the mentorship program to be valuable, those students that choose it. The instructors gave, within their responses, they gave evidence to support this, things like information being shared in class during class conversations, actually seeing students with mentors, sending students to mentors for getting help, things of this nature. In general, the instructors knew that students made use of, and they even directed students to the program. Most interesting finding, when the question was asked, do you believe the mentorship program could be a potential asset to future small group instructors? And the most interesting responses was the second one, in which the respondent brought up the fact that some instructors are new and it would have been great to have the feedback from year twos. in order to support instructors and help them with what they may or how they may teach for their cohort. Also, the notion of time came up, so we started embedding ourselves in classrooms and introducing ourselves within week 4 and then on to week 5 and 6 and such, whereas some instructors were saying it would have been better to have the program from weeks 1 to 4 have its support there, because that's when things are just getting off the ground and they could really use the extra help. And then all participants were very keen on actually having mentors embedded in the classroom, as well as doing work outside of the classroom. So recommendations: definitely continue the mentorship program. Have a bit of a time shift, so more heavier focus and support within weeks 1 to 4. Also providing in-class help during work periods rather than coming at the beginning of class. And then also having mentors involved within class just as much as outside. Just to end on a note of gratitude, overall the community is very grateful for the efforts that we are making, the time we're taking out of our schedules to put mentorship into place and to get to know instructors and to help out first years. So it is an important work, and hopefully this continues in the future. Thank you for listening.
Hi, this is Werda. Now we'll go through my research question and the results. So my research problem first was realizing that there's a need for peer mentorship in the BEd program at UIT and how we can best implement it, which led to my inquiry question: how did Year 1 students feel before making use of Year 2 mentors, and how did they feel after they spoke to them about their questions/concerns, and what are some of the most significant supports Year 2 mentors can offer Year 1s? So, my learning goal was to understand effective methods of mentoring and which avenues were most beneficial to students. So, whether they preferred in person sessions or the Padlet or online forum that we offered to them to post their questions and concern on. And through my research on papers to help me with my topic, I found various studies that looked at the impacts of mentorship on students, whether it be with students with autism spectrum disorder, the impacts on the mentors themselves, and what the mentors' motivations were, which surprisingly were the same as mine, one of them being the desire to provide something for others that they wish they had had. Another study looked at the general effect of peer mentorship in post-secondary institutions. And my fourth study looked at the impact of peer mentorship on students with disabilities. So these studies gave great insight to my own inquiry question and helped to truly focus my research by getting a better understanding and opening my mind to different aspects of mentees and mentors. The studies overall found peer mentorship to be of a great benefit to mentees, no matter what, because simply providing support meant a lot to them. The framework I used to go about my inquiry was Kolb's learning cycle, which first I engaged in abstract conceptualization by thinking about my own personal experiences back in Year 1 and what I would have wanted when I was in that position. Active experimentation came into play when we implemented this mentorship in Year 2. I then had a concrete experience while being on the flip side of things, where I then engaged in reflective observation to see what was working and what wasn't. Then, by obtaining active feedback from Year 1 students and my own peers as well as the faculty members, the next cohort of Year 2s can implement the improvements from our observations and help the next Year 1 students. So, my success criteria was to conduct a survey, to gather results, make personal notes along the way, to write down any observations and make improvements along the way, uh, provide the survey results to Year 1 so they can implement those improvements, make use of the Padlet, and to get verbal feedback from Year 1 students. So, thinking back to my success criteria, here's what I gathered. Personal notes and observations since day 1 are what led to changes along the way. So, like the addition of a Padlet, the online forum, for a different way for Year 1s to connect with us and to offer accessibility. Through verbal feedback, I've learned many students have confided that they felt so much relief after just a 10-minute conversation with us, which confirmed my belief that our initiative was overall a beneficial one. It wasn't just something that, would have helped me, but it's helping almost everyone. And after conducting a survey sent out to all Year 1 students, majority of the answers were ones that I expected, but there also were some that I did not expect. So let's take a look at the results. So for this question. This is the first part of my inquiry question. How did you feel before making use of your two mentors versus after you spoke to them about your questions/concerns? So, for this question, the general consensus was that students felt overwhelmed, confused, and stressed at first, but more at ease and on track and supported after speaking to the year twos. Some students didn't feel that it made a difference as their stressors came from other things like the program design itself or the fact that mentorship wasn't immediately available from week one, where it would have made even more of a difference. Of course, the reason for that would be that we were at placement in week one. By the time we got the ball rolling on mentorship, we were well into week 2 and 3. So, this is something that can be improved upon for next year. The second part of my inquiry question was, what are some of the most significant supports year twos can offer year ones? And the most significant supports were, it ranged from the DLP, helping with the DLP, helping with the FE binder, the lesson plan, navigating assignments, clarifying expectations, providing reassurance and support, the Padlet, sharing personal experiences, sharing resources, explaining assignments in great detail, advice for placements, and quite simply just being there as a support system helped a lot of people. The next question is to tackle my learning goal of which avenue students found most beneficial for peer mentorship so that it can be implemented in the best way possible. So, most people prefer speaking in person or both the online and in person sessions. And people did mention that they liked the online aspect for quick questions, but most people preferred in person because you can tackle so many things that way. My final question was whether year one students were interested in making peer mentorship a legitimate program for the future, and the results were a pleasant amount of yeses, with others being indifferent or uninterested. So, where do we go from here? The first improvement would be to implement mentorship and or the year two Foundation Friday a bit earlier, maybe even hold sessions before classes begin to ease the student transition. Second, it would be to conduct sessions during times other than lunchtime because people generally want to either eat or relax or focus on assignments during their one lunch hour. So maybe year two is going into small group foundations classes to have one on one sessions might be helpful. Next, which addresses my learning goal, is to keep the in person and online duality of this peer mentorship program because people do prefer speaking in person because you can address so many things face to face. But the online part is also helpful because it answers questions that some students wouldn't even think to ask themselves, and someone else has asked it on the Padlet so they can see the answer over there. Or if they have a quick concern, they can randomly think of at home, they can post it there, and a year two can get back to them. Lastly, to continue the peer mentorship program, with a strenuous program like the BEd program, it's crucial to have a support system around you. And while that can be friends and family for some, it can make a world of difference if someone who's, quote unquote, been there, done that, is there for you to ease your worries. The education system as a whole could benefit greatly from cohesiveness and a deeper connection between upper year cohorts and entry year cohorts.
All right. So my focus for this internship was looking at what are the barriers to asking for help. So when a student needs extra help, and if they know they need extra help, why might they not seek that help from the teacher or from whoever it might be who's offering the extra help? My learning goals are to understand how students ask for help from their peers and to evaluate why students approach certain people when seeking advice or help. My success criteria: I will identify how students ask for help and why they choose the way they ask. I will identify the factors that affect why students may or may not approach peers or teachers for extra help, and I will evaluate how, as a teacher, we can reduce the discomfort when asking for extra help. The framework I've chosen to use for this internship, along with so many other people, is Kolb's model. Um, the reason I've chosen this model is because it's a nice cycle that I think people often go through when they're in an experiential learning environment, And I think we went through this cycle a couple of times during this internship and mentorship program. I think we started for sure in the concrete experience. That's back when we were going through first years and experiencing the stress of first year. And then as we moved forward, we started reflecting on what we did when we were in first year and the struggles that we had, and started thinking about what we might have needed or what it would have been nice to have available to us in order to reduce some of the stress that we had. So that was the abstract conceptualization piece before going into the active experimentation, where we were trying to figure out what this mentorship program would look like, how we would set it up, and how we would organize it, before going back into the concrete experience, which was actually doing the mentorship and doing this internship. And I think now, at this point in our internship and going through and producing this video, we're back in the reflective observation stage, where we're looking back on our experiences and trying to think of better ways to implement this program in future years, so that they can go in with active experimentation and figure out this program for themselves. This model also incorporates different learning styles that go into each part of the cycle. So there's a diverging learning style, which puts emphasis on feeling and watching in order to learn. Assimilation, which puts emphasis on thinking and watching. Converging, which puts emphasis on thinking and doing. And accommodation, which puts emphasis on feeling and doing. And that's kind of the main area where I think there are some limitations to this model. One limitation is that during learning experiences, we don't always go through the cycle step by step, and it doesn't really allow for the fact that sometimes we may skip steps. We may just go straight from reflective observation to active experimentation, which I think is what happened often in this mentorship. We would be doing something, we'd have that concrete experience, then we'd reflect on it, and based on those reflections alone, we'd go back into active experimentation and looking at changing it in order to make it better. The other thing is it doesn't allow combinations of learning styles at different stages of the cycle. I think oftentimes people will have some kind of combination of, say, diverging and assimilating when they're going through certain steps, rather than just having, one learning style for one step of the cycle and then going into another and then another. I think there's probably a lot of people experience combination of these learning styles during the stages of the cycle. So my approach to the research was to talking to and observing the first years as they were seeking help. So actually, observing them as they were coming up or deciding whether or not to come up to us for extra help, and then talking to them and feeling out the conversation. We also put out a survey to all of the first years to gain some feedback on our mentorship program. And in that survey, each of us put in one or two questions that relates directly back to our inquiry question for the actual internship. And then, of course, we all reviewed literature and prior research on our topic. So the findings from the literature, the main kind of points were that students or other people who are seeking help will often overestimate the number of people they must ask before they receive the help. So what that means is people, in different ways, underestimate the willingness of others to help. We assume that, let's say, for example, one of the examples they talked about in the paper was asking somebody to borrow their cell phone. They assumed they'd have to ask, say, 30 people before somebody would let them do it, where in reality, the second or third person let them borrow their cell phone. So that just shows an insecurity of people asking for help. On the flip side, a different study showed that teachers or other help givers often overestimate the number of people who will approach them for help. And that's something we kind of saw, or at least I saw in our mentorship. The first mentorship session that we held, I think we had somewhere between 50 and 70 first years who came for extra help. So I think we assumed that in subsequent sessions we would have similar numbers. I think we realized that they would drop off a little bit. That's not what we saw. We generally, from then on, overestimated how many people would come. We usually only had a handful of people coming to ask for extra help on the other specific sessions that we had. And students often face barriers to asking for help. So there's stress around asking for help, and there's also the piece of being embarrassed about needing the help that sometimes keeps students from actually going and asking for it. And so, how do my observations during our internship actually tie into this? Well, there were often times when we were doing our sessions when I would notice that people seemed apprehensive or unsure when approaching the mentors for help. They would stand and stare at us for a while before they would step up and actually ask for help. And then when they would do that, a lot of them, or some of them at least, would be apologizing profusely when asking for help. They'd apologize for coming up to us, interrupting us, and we'd often find ourselves reiterating that that's the reason we're here, is we want to give them help, we want to help them. So I think that shows a little bit of embarrassment around coming and asking for help. The survey, which we gave out, had overwhelmingly positive responses from the students. A lot of them really liked having the mentorship program and benefited from it, but that doesn't mean some of them weren't stressed. There certainly was stress around coming and asking for help, such as this one person saying the mentorship program was just added stress either to seek help or have to go in and figure stuff out. So that one quote right there is one of the responses to the survey that shows that some people do still have stress around going to ask for help from their peers. So in the future, when looking at mentorship and giving students extra help, research actually shows that barriers to asking for help, such as, and most importantly, embarrassment around needing the help, are greatly reduced by dispelling discomfort around asking for help rather than explaining the benefits to seeking help. So what this means is that if you're going to be offering extra help, it's more beneficial to students. Students are more likely to seek the extra help when you make it a safe space. Make it well known that you want to be there for extra help. There's no such thing as a stupid question. If you need help, come and get it. We're more than willing to do it. Research shows that that type of explanation is more beneficial for students than just simply explaining them the benefits of actually seeking help. So I think as teachers, we should focus on making our classroom a safer place for students to get help, rather than just explaining to them why they need to come and get help. That is the end of my presentation on the internship that we did. These are my references. Thank you very much.
Okay, so now shifting focus over to my research question. So my question itself was, how might the use of online learning platforms like Blackboard and Wix impact teacher candidate stress level when entering the education program? So when I think back to when I started, I had a little bit of issue with Wix. Blackboard is something I use quite extensively, but I know not every university has Blackboard. So what I want to focus on more specifically when approaching this problem would be the online learning platforms themselves. So Blackboard, Wix, Google Drive, other things that are recommended through the university itself. And then I also want to take a look into the structures provided by the faculty, so how the Faculty of Education is instructed to carry out the use of these online platforms and how that may affect the students themselves. So my learning goals. So by the end of my internship, I was planning on being able to determine the beginning of the teacher's education program is stressful and for what reasons through testimonials and surveys. So by talking to the students that I'm mentoring and we're providing an end of semester survey. Solving common issues, so this kind of goes with the mentorship thing in general, just helping out the first years is definitely a main goal of the mentorship. And then finally, deducing general trends and thoughts and opinions about the online learning environments, along with the imminent switch from Blackboard to a new platform in the coming year, because that is something that is happening soon and will happen as a transition for the first years into their second year. So to demonstrate I've achieved those learning goals, I wanted to be able to identify and describe various forms of stress induced by the start of our teacher's education program, more specifically when it comes to the online component. Analyze the varying course structures in terms of the online learning environments the university uses or recommends. And finally, interpret common technical issues presented by Google Drive, Wix, or Blackboard. Okay, so the framework I chose to use is the Community of Inquiry framework. I have the reference in the reference section, so don't worry about that. So basically, this is something we covered in one of our first year courses. And we look at the three facets of an educational experience. So we're looking at basically the teaching presence, the social presence and the cognitive presence in any sort of learning environment. It doesn't have to be online, but I want to focus on this in an online aspect, because often when you're looking at an online learning platform, one or more of these is usually missing. And from my experience, a lot of what I see that's missing is really the social presence and the teaching presence. So I wanted to see if this is relatable to what may be causing stress in these students who are entering the program and having to use these online learning platforms. So the research method, very simple, very straightforward. I did student testimonials, just talking to the students as I'm mentoring them. We had an end of semester survey. So we sent out a survey monkey and we got about 35 responses, all of which were very useful. And finally, some peer research. So just me probing around different candidates, maybe not within the mentorship program to avoid a little bit of bias, but just other teacher candidates I may know in casual conversation, bringing up the topic of Blackboard and Wix and getting their general opinions. Okay, so student testimonials. So these came back also as part of the survey. So one of the questions I asked was basically if the students felt the faculty needs to set an organization for Blackboard, and of the 33 students who responded, 100% said yes, that there should be more structure. Looking more so into testimonials, a lot of what I received was that the help should have been offered to them sooner. So they enjoyed the fact that they had the mentorship, but they believe it could have been started sooner. It has been explained by Diana that because of the structure of our courses ourselves, we had no opportunity to start sooner, but this may be something the university should look into the future, having this set up at the end of first year for the second years coming in, or if not that, maybe their own program within the faculty to help out the students beyond just the lunch and learns. So just going to read a few of the testimonials I got that they seem to all kind of fall along this line. There were a few outliers, but just focus on these ones. So I was highly stressed. There were no clear instructions for the Wix site. I was never positive I was on the right track. The teachers only explained it the day or two before it was due. The FE binder videos on Blackboard were helpful, but the professors in class were not helpful until again, right before it was due. Very unhelpful and disappointing, as this program has been around for a while and should be more organized. So that was from one student, seems to be a bit disgruntled. Another student would say, I think this was the most stressful part of starting school. I found it cumbersome and inefficient to have course content on multiple platforms such as Google Docs, Blackboard, and Wix. So this is something that I've seen even throughout my education here at Ontario Tech U. Different teachers seem to have a vendetta against Blackboard, and as they're not required to use Blackboard specifically, some will move to different websites. Like I have had a teacher be using Weebly, one using Google Docs, one using Blackboard, and just kind of tracking down where everything is and where anything is due becomes kind of stressful because you don't remember which class is associated with which platform. So bringing this into more of a discussion aspect, so tying back into my annotated bibliography, so faculty inconsistencies seem to be the main cause of stress when it comes to these online learning platforms. I wouldn't ever argue that these tools are poor tools. I think they're just underutilized. I feel like guidelines to the faculty at any university, not just Ontario Tech U, but any university in general, should be more specific. So by giving these teachers the guidelines, students can learn and basically follow the template to find everything they need, sort of reducing that stress associated with the online learning platform. So quite similar to Talal, the faculty barriers don't seem to be what's focused on. As the student testimonials would say, quite the opposite. The students themselves are focusing on the inconsistencies with the staff and what's required for utilizing these online learning platforms. But I agree as well. When we take a critical look at these online learning platforms, we're looking at the facets of the platform itself and not necessarily the utilization. Because honestly, Blackboard has pretty much every facet of the COI framework. It's just it doesn't seem like they're all used in an appropriate manner to keep students engaged and interested. And that extends to the asynchronous components. A lot of what we see is very superficial. Students will purposely respond to posts that are a lot shorter. Something I'll be honest, I've personally done it, and I've seen friends do it, and I've seen other peers do it. And this is also noted in Yes paper. So very similar results for their study on Blackboard and asynchronous components. Just jumping back a bit, so preparation for teacher candidates. So I feel like we were trained, or we had the privilege of being educated quite well on how to use these platforms, And looking at these frameworks, including the COI framework, it kind of gives us a direction to follow, which I think is fantastic. But how about the educators? So like teacher education as its own subset is something that hasn't really been looked at in research regarding online learning platforms, because the development of these platforms has been more of a recent development. But all in all, I mean, it's hard to blame anyone, really. I'm not trying to blame anyone here, but just looking at it from a completely research standpoint, it seems like the negligence when it comes to faculty inconsistencies on online learning environments is really what's causing the stress to these new students, because they don't know what to follow, they don't know what they need to do, what's due, when it's due, just because of this breakdown in communication. Okay, so as results, online learning platforms caused a great deal of stress to the students. Granted, this is a sample size of about 35 people. I've talked to maybe 2 people out of everyone I talked to who said that it didn't really affect them all too much. These students had used Blackboard in the past and were pretty intuitive with just looking around, right? Some people don't have that ability, which no fault to them. This stress was caused by the lack of organization, so just inconsistencies in how things are laid out, where things are laid out is a big part of it. The lack of a teacher presence. So this is something I got from a lot of different students, is that the teachers will post announcements, they'll tell you when things are due, but when it comes to responses and things on Blackboard, it seems to be very spread out and inconsistent. So actually communicating with the teacher through the platform, as it's encouraged in most universities, seems to almost be the worst way of communicating with these teachers, because really, like, you'll have class with them in a few days, just go talk to them in class, because you send them an email on Blackboard, and I've experienced this at both of my degrees, and I don't get a response back, or when I do, it's too late, my question's already answered, right? So just, if I may be so bold to provide some possible critiques to my research, I feel like unification of these platforms and strict guidelines may help out with this stress that is being induced to the students, kind of facilitating what they need to do specifically when it comes to the online learning platforms is a big deal to these students, it seems. If they know what they need to do, getting this far and being in this program is really proof enough, for the most part, that these students will do what they need to do if they know what they need to do. And although Blackboard is a great tool for communicating what they need to do, I feel like our university and other universities, congruent with my research, haven't really been utilizing it in an effective way, and we tend to blame the platform itself rather than the breakdown in communication. So I feel like it could flip an outlook with more structure. So all we have to do to kind of make online learning environments have more of a positive connotation would really just structure them. Make them a little more structured, provide guidelines and direction so everyone's happy in the end. Okay, and here are my references. I'll just leave this up for a few seconds so you can take note. Thank you, though.
Hi, my name is Jessica Puyas, and this is my internship presentation for our overall mentorship initiative. My inquiry question is, how would sharing my personal experience, such as staying organized while working part-time as a Year 2 teacher candidate, impact the experiences of Year 1's induction into the B.Ed program? My learning goal is, by the end of this internship, I will be able to identify and analyze how sharing my own personal experiences with Year 1's impacted their perspective on their own journey through the B.Ed program. My success criteria are to create an informal discussion with 4 Year 1 teacher candidates, analyze results from surveys for Year 1s to complete anonymously to gain more information of their experiences, better understanding of the possible differences of the IS and PJ experiences through the program. So when I did my annotated bibliography, I decided to pick 3 out of the 5 articles to discuss in this video. So the first reading is basically a focus on personal and professional learning and transformative learning as a holistic experience. Basically, the holistic level can be broken down through emotional, cognitive, spiritual, physical, and social and environmental. I mainly connected how the emotional and physical and social aspect of transformative learning connected to my internship because of how these three themes are major in students' learning and adapting to the rapid changes that occur within this program. The second reading is the use of digital storytelling in connection to media and technology to help enhance student learning. So, this reading, because our program is heavily based with the technology and incorporating it into our teaching and learning, I found that this article is fitting because it discusses the ideas of digital storytelling and obviously then enhancing student learning. In connection to my internship, having different digital stories from year twos to show year ones could be beneficial in how they view the program. And this could be an introduction to meeting year twos and create a connection while the year twos are still available to talk to physically. The third article I have listed connects not only to the mentor but to the mentee as well. So this article explores the significant contribution that is developed with both sides and how it impacts both the professional and aspect, but also the collegial network as well. This fits well with my inquiry question about personal experiences because even though I am sharing my own, I am still learning from year ones and how their experiences can be similar and different to my induction into the program. So originally, I had decided to do Cole's framework, but after putting together my slides and reflecting on my internship, I decided that Kolb's framework was much more related to how my internship was laid out. This is due to, I guess, my feeling of how I felt about the program, and then obviously seeing how it overlapped over time, and then thinking about how I felt through the program and up until this point, and then now this is actually me doing um, what I wanted and what I hoped happened to me at the beginning of the program. So it's basically coming full circle of my connection to the year ones and how hopefully me talking about my personal experiences has impacted them some way, somehow. So for my research, um, basically, because we were a group, we all obviously decided to talk to them as a group at the beginning. And slowly, I decided to think of ways of how I could nitpick ideas and like thoughts and like questions and concerns specifically related to my own inquiry question. So talking to an overall group of year ones was a beneficial because I was able to gain an overall view and understanding of how year ones felt and thought, but I figured another way would be to speak directly to a couple of year ones. In the end, I was able to talk to two IS and two PJs. My approach was much more as a conversation about the program, which eventually led to sharing my own personal experiences, specifically to working part time, but still managing to stay organized. I allowed the year ones to first express how they felt and how they're able to manage, and then I shared my own way. Basically, having an agenda, color coding the agenda, but also having like due dates and assignments, sticky tabs on my laptop. I guess the purpose of this was to remind myself that I have something due and that not to forget, like as the weeks go by, because the weeks go by so fast that I have to keep up with what is due, what is coming up. And so this also allows me to not stay behind. By sharing this, my hope was they could use it um, while they're in the program, or maybe like they might not feel that they need it in the moment, but they'll have the idea to reflect on throughout the program. So in the end, as a group, we put together a survey monkey and put in specific questions that pertain to our specific approach to the mentorship. So my question was, how did talking to a year twos about their personal experience impact your view on the program? So some of them here, it made me feel my concerns were valid. The year twos told me they had similar worries at first, but as they progress, you get a handle on things. This made me feel validated that it's okay to be stressed and that eventually all the new stuff will feel normal. It helped me feel like I wasn't alone, almost helped me picture where I will be in my second year and where I am now, that they were in the same position. I really appreciate the time given to us by year twos. I see amazing teachers with profound knowledge in a system and makes assessing and interacting with that knowledge a bit frustrating. I spent about as much time figuring out what to do than interacting with my teachers' insights. It made me feel better about the way I was feeling in the program. I didn't feel so alone. It helped me to think of the program in terms of if they can make it through so can I, and they felt the same way. brought a face and a person to the experience rather than just reading it, made their stories more relatable and real. It made them much more manageable um, because they have experiences of all the material deadlines. It was nice to hear that it is manageable. I was able to see while this program will be will be a lot of work, it is nothing that cannot be tackled with the proper time management and good organization skills. Um, so overall, majority was positive. There were some that were not impacted, and this happens. It is hard to approach more year ones when there are less individuals in the mentorship program. But looking at these results, I feel accomplished in the sense I was able to share my own experiences, not to scare year ones, but to be authentic and genuine with what I was sharing. My hopes that they would use it to their advantage, only time will tell, and hopefully they will. Um, so I hope that whatever I was able to share and whatever I was able to give insight to does help the year ones. And also my hope would be that they continue this mentorship after we kind of leave, just so that because they know that they were in that position, they can also help those after them. That's basically my internship. Thank you for listening and following along in my internship journey.
All right. My inquiry question is, how can support and guidance in the form of Q&A Padlet 101 from former students in the Ontario Tech University Teachers College program help to reduce stress of new students entering the program? My 2 learning goals are: 1, by the end of the interim membership program, I hope to learn skills that can help to reduce stress for future grade 8 students entering high school and grade 12 students entering the university, college, and real world. 2, by the end of the interim membership program, first-year students will feel more confident and show fewer signs of being stressed moving forward to completing their degree. My 4 success criteria are: 1, talking to the first-year students directly and having an understanding of how stressed they are. 2, observe the type of questions that is posted on the Padlet. 3, speaking with some of the first-year professors and university liaisons to learn if first-year students are benefiting and feel less stressed after speaking to year 2 students. 4, better understanding of the topic through the results from a SurveyMonkey poll and asking how the students felt at the start of the program versus towards the end of term 1. Although there wasn't a lot of research about any mentorship program for first-year students in the Teachers College that is related to my inquiry question, there was a lot of information and research that is related to the induction program for new and beginner teachers. An induction program are comprehensive initiations or introductions to a position that provide inexperienced teachers with the necessary models and tools for beginning their teaching careers, as well as specific guidance aimed at helping them meet performance standards. Depending on the type of induction program, it could include mentoring, assistance in planning, professional development, and evaluation. Overall, the articles talked about how the induction program and how it really helped the new and beginning teachers in their first year of teaching. They also noticed that teachers who did enter the program were less likely to move to a new school and didn't leave the career as a whole. Most teachers also feel as if they can be isolated as a new teacher, which can lead to stress, but by having the induction program, they felt as if they always had someone to turn to, thus reduces the stress level. These induction programs have a positive impact on teachers and have shown to counteract the anxiety and stress facing new teachers. My framework, the purpose and end goal of my inquiry question follows Kolb's model. The outer layer of Kolb's model shown here has 4 stages, learning cycles, in which the learner must cover. The 4 are concrete experience, reflective observation, abstract, conceptualized, and active experimentation. Concrete experience is new experience encountered, reflective observation of the new experience. What is important? Are there any conflicts that have arisen? Abstract conceptualization. Reflection will give rise to new ideas or modifications. And active experimentation. Apply what the learner has learned with the world. How does my inquiry question follow Kolb's model? Well, the internship program for the first-year teacher candidates on Ontario Tech University is new. Based on evidence and observations with the interaction of the new students, this term will help to determine if it is a positive factor or not, what was or wasn't beneficial during the internship, and what can be done to help the students further. If the internship program is overall successful, it could be implemented every year by new second-year cohorts to help the next generation of first-year students. So a few ways in order to collect the research was done through SurveyMonkey, observation on Padlets for types of questions, asking first-year students directly, and talking to some first-year professors and university liaisons. The next few slides will show the results from the SurveyMonkey. The first question is, which platform did you use to seek support and help? In the results here, the platform that was made available to the students included Lunch and Learn, Padlet, One-on-One, Drop-in Sessions, and other. Overall, it seems that most of the platforms were used evenly, with Padlet being used the most during the internship. When looking at this result, it was beneficial to have more than one type of platform for the second-year students to reach out. It allows the students to either approach the second-year students face-to-face or online if they were shy. In the comment section, some students have replied that they used more than one of these platforms, and some had even said they had used all 4 platforms. The second question, did the mentorship program Year 2 students help to reduce your stress levels throughout the year? Overall, almost 85% of the 32 students that replied suggested that the program did help to reduce at least some stress level. 44% of the 32 suggested that it helped reduce a lot of stress. 41% of the 32 had suggested it helped to reduce the stress a bit, and 14% of the 32 suggested it didn't help at all. The third question, do you have any suggestions as to what the mentorship/Year 2 students can do to further help reduce stress levels for future students? There was a wide range of answers that the students had responded with. Some students either skipped the question or answered with not available. Some students suggested that we could provide some physical activities such as meditation, yoga, or activities in the gym located in the North Campus to help reduce stress. Students also suggested that we do activities on the North Campus rather than just the downtown campus. Students also suggested that going over any large assignments as soon as possible, such as the DLP and Field Experience Binder, would be extremely beneficial. Students had also suggested that maybe a day before the program actually starts, we could talk about some pointers and tips of how to complete large assignments, where to find everything, similar to like a Foundation Friday, but maybe the Friday prior to the program being started. And another student had even made a comment saying that the program had helped them a lot and that it ran completely smoothly and nothing needed to be added or changed. Looking at the results of the comments on the Padlet, at the beginning of the internship program, students were asking a lot more questions that were related to the DLP and FE binder. Towards the end of the program, they were asking more questions related to resources about the school or specific Foundation Friday classes. When speaking to the students directly and after helping them answer their questions, I had asked how the students felt during the program, and students had suggested that they still felt really stressed throughout the program with all the work that they had to do, but felt less stressed knowing that they had somewhere to go or ask for help and guidance if needed. Comments from first-year professors. Some of the first-year professors or university liaisons suggested that most first-year students felt less stressed after speaking to second-year students. Overall, the mentorship helps students feel less stressed after viewing or visiting one of the platform options. More resources is needed in order to help reduce the stress levels, such as physical activities or breathing exercises. And it would also be extremely beneficial to the first-year students if the mentorship program started as soon as possible. And here are my references. Overall, since this is the first year that the mentorship program has been introduced, we know that there are a few modifications that need to be made in order to better help the future first-year students. We hope that this program is able to proceed in the following years and continue to address the needs of the first-year students. That concludes our presentation. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the discussion below and we will respond to you as soon as possible. Thank you.